Here is something that genuinely irritates me about the way we tell history. We hand the word winner to whoever physically sat on the throne. Crown on the head, coronation done, that is the winner. Write it in the book. And by that measure, the woman in this story lost. She was robbed of a kingdom that was lawfully hers, hunted across a frozen country in the dark, and she never once felt the weight of an English crown on her head. And yet, every English monarch for the next 8.5 centuries, every single one, right down to the family in the palace today, sits on that throne because this one woman refused to accept that she had lost. The Queen who never wore the crown. The untold story of Queen Matilda of England. We're Arthur's living history. And using AI trained on monastic chronicles, royal charters, and the bitter eyewitness accounts of a country tearing itself apart, we are about to put the crown back on the right head. Let me take you to a harbour in Normandy on a cold November night in 1120. Barfleur. The water is black and flat. A new vessel called the White Ship rides at the quay, the pride of the Anglo-Norman fleet, and onto it, laughing, half of them already deep in wine, climbs the cream of England's young nobility. Among them is a 17-year-old named William Adelin, the only legitimate son of King Henry I, the boy who is going to be the next King of England. The ship pushes off into the dark. The rowers are as drunk as the passengers, and somewhere out in that black water, moving fast to overtake the king's own ship, the White Ship strikes a rock just below the surface. It goes down within reach of the shore. The heir to England goes down with it. When the news is carried to King Henry, his court cannot bring themselves to tell him for a full day. When they finally do, the chronicles say the king collapses to the floor and that he never truly smiles again for the rest of his life. And I want you to sit with the cold political arithmetic underneath that grief, because it is the engine of everything that follows. Henry I has just lost his only lawful son. He has no other. He has one remaining legitimate child in all the world, a daughter, and her name is Matilda. Now, Matilda is not some sheltered princess waiting to be told what her life will be. By 1120, she has already lived a life most monarchs never match. She was sent away from England at the age of 8 to be betrothed to the Holy Roman Emperor, Henry V, the most powerful ruler in Western Christendom, and she was crowned alongside him at 12. She spent her teens and early 20s as Empress, sitting in on imperial councils, hearing petitions, governing whole provinces of Italy in her husband's name, while he was occupied elsewhere, learning statecraft at the absolute summit of European power. She watched how an empire was actually held together, by charters, by alliances, by patience, by knowing exactly when to be generous and when to be immovable. She is widowed by 23, and when her father summons her home, she returns to England not as a girl, but as a woman who has already worn an imperial crown and governed in her own right. So in 1127, at his Christmas court, Henry I does something that has almost no precedent in English history. He gathers every powerful baron in his realm, and he makes them swear a solemn sacred oath on holy relics that when he is gone, they will accept his daughter Matilda as their rightful ruler, the Lady of England. He does not do this once. He makes them swear it again, and then a third time. 3 times these hard, armoured men kneel and give their word before God. Hold on to that oath, 3 times sworn, because the speed with which it evaporates is going to tell you everything about the century she is living in. Her father also arranges her second marriage, and it is not a romantic one, it is a border security one. He marries her to Geoffrey, the young Count of Anjou, a rival power on Normandy's southern frontier. He is around 15, she is around 25, a former empress being wed to a teenager from a smaller house, and by every account she finds the whole thing beneath her and says so. The marriage is frosty, then openly hostile, but it does its work. It produces, in 1133, a son. They name him Henry, after his grandfather. Remember that boy. He is the entire point of this story, though no one knows it yet. On the 1st of December, 1135, after a week of illness, King Henry I is gone. And here is where the oath, the one sworn 3 times on the bones of saints, is worth precisely nothing. Because Matilda is not in England when her father's life ends. She is in Anjou. And in the days it takes the news to travel, somebody else moves, and moves fast. Her cousin, Stephen of Blois, a grandson of William the Conqueror, like her, charming, well-liked, generous, and standing conveniently close to the Channel. Stephen does not wait. He races to England, rides hard for London, and within 3 weeks of the old king's passing, he has talked, charmed, and bargained his way into Westminster Abbey, where he is anointed and crowned King of England. The church backs him. The barons who swore that triple oath to Matilda, they look at the crowned man in front of them, and they look at an absent woman in Anjou, and they make their excuses. The argument they reach for is as old as it is convenient. A woman, they say, cannot lead an army. A woman cannot hold a kingdom in war. What follows is England's forgotten catastrophe. We call it the Anarchy, and for 19 years it grinds the country into the mud. Matilda does not simply accept the theft. In 1139, she crosses to England to take back what is hers by right, and she comes with 2 formidable allies. Her half-brother Robert, Earl of Gloucester, one of the finest soldiers of the age, and the support of her uncle, the King of Scots. The country splits, castle against castle, the west and the southwest for Matilda, the southeast for Stephen, and in between, a no-man's land where local lords throw up unauthorized castles and simply take whatever they want from whoever cannot stop them. The chroniclers of the time wrote a line about these years that has never been bettered for sheer horror. They wrote that it was a time when Christ and his saints slept. And Matilda, it turns out, has a particular talent for slipping out of impossible corners. The Oxford escape is the famous one, but it is not even her first. Earlier in the war, cornered at Devizes Castle, she had herself wrapped tightly in cloths and bindings and carried out straight through the enemy's watch, disguised, the chroniclers say, as a figure being taken away for burial. She rode out of one trap, playing a body on a bier, and out of the next one, dressed as falling snow. Whatever else you want to call this woman, you cannot call her easily caught. And then, for one extraordinary year, Matilda nearly wins the whole thing outright. The 2nd of February, 1141, the Battle of Lincoln. Matilda's forces, led by her half-brother Robert, smash Stephen's army in the mud and the cold. And they do not just defeat Stephen, they capture the king himself. He is taken fighting, the chroniclers say, swinging until the very end, and then he is carried off to a cell in Bristol Castle and put in irons. For the first time, the throne is genuinely, physically empty. Matilda is the ruler of England in all but the final ceremony. She is acclaimed at Winchester, she takes the title Lady of the English, and she travels toward London for the last step, the coronation, the crown itself. She is closer to it in the summer of 1141 than she will ever be again. And this is where her story turns, and turns on something painfully human. Matilda arrives at Westminster to be crowned, and she needs the City of London on her side, and the Londoners, frankly, want concessions. They want their taxes eased. They want to be courted. And Matilda, who has been an empress, who has been robbed of a throne that was triple sworn to her, who is by now genuinely out of patience with being asked to beg for what is hers by law, Matilda refuses to flatter them. She demands money instead. The chroniclers, who were not on her side, call her proud, haughty, stiff-necked. I want to be fair to her here, because the chroniclers were not. A man behaving exactly as she did would have been called firm, or kingly, or resolute. She does the same things, and the same century calls her arrogant. Every account we have of her was written by men who had already decided a woman in power was unnatural. We are not reading her. We are reading their discomfort. But fair or not, it costs her everything. The Londoners rise. The church bells of the city ring out, not in welcome, but as an alarm, and a furious mob pours through the streets toward Westminster. Matilda and her household barely get to their horses in time. She is chased out of her own capital, the food still warm on the abandoned banquet tables, the crown still uncollected, and the war grinds back into motion. It gets worse before the year is out. That autumn, at the rout of Winchester, Matilda's army is broken in a chaotic retreat, and her half-brother Robert, her best general, her right hand, the man holding her whole cause together, is captured by Stephen's side. And now Matilda has to make an agonizing trade. The only thing valuable enough to ransom Robert is the prisoner she is holding. She exchanges King Stephen for her brother. In a single transaction, she hands her enemy his freedom and his crown back. The war resets to where it began. Everything won at Lincoln, undone. Which brings us to the winter of 1142 and the single most famous night of her life. By December, Stephen has cornered her. Matilda is inside Oxford Castle, held for her by a loyal baron named Robert D'Oyley, and Stephen's army is wrapped around it in a siege that has already lasted 3 punishing months. Stephen has burned the town of Oxford itself to the ground around the castle walls, a ring of ash and smoke in the snow. The food inside the walls is almost gone. The weather is merciless, deep snow over everything, the rivers locking solid with ice. Stephen knows it. He is not even attacking hard anymore. He is simply waiting for hunger to hand her to him. The capture of Matilda would, in all likelihood, end the war and the dynasty in one stroke. So Matilda does the thing they put on the postcards. On one of the coldest nights of the year, she dresses herself entirely in white, head to foot, a white cloak over white cloth, for one cold, brilliant reason. White against snow is invisible. With a tiny handful of trusted knights dressed the same way, she is lowered by rope down the walls of the castle, almost certainly from the tall stone shaft of St. George's Tower, into the freezing dark below. The snow is falling thickly, and the falling snow is her friend. It muffles sound and erases footprints. They walk out, on foot, directly through the gaps in King Stephen's own siege lines, past his watchfires, past his sentries, white ghosts moving through a white country. Then they reach the river. The Thames, the Isis as it runs past Oxford, is frozen hard enough to carry their weight. Some accounts say she crossed it on foot, some say barefoot to feel the ice, some say they had crude skates, and on the far side she simply keeps walking, miles through the snow in the dark, until she reaches the safety of her own garrison at Wallingford. The next morning, Oxford Castle surrenders. Stephen walks in and finds the prize gone. He had the war in his hand, and she had stepped through his fingers in the snow. Honestly, every time I come to this part, I just stop and marvel at the sheer nerve of it. A former empress, robbed of a kingdom, climbing down a rope into a siege in the depth of winter. That is not the behavior of someone history should be allowed to file under haughty. And here is the truly remarkable thing about Matilda. After all of that, after Lincoln, after London, after the rope and the ice, she does the hardest thing of all. She reads the board honestly. In 1147, her half-brother Robert is lost, and with him goes her main military strength. Matilda is in her mid-40s. She has been fighting for a crown for over a decade, and she can see clearly that she herself is never going to wear it. The English barons will not have her, so she makes a decision that takes more strength than any siege escape. She stops fighting for her own coronation, and she pours everything she has left into a different campaign, her son. There was already a foundation to build on. While Matilda had been fighting through the English snow, her estranged teenage husband, Geoffrey of Anjou, had been quietly doing something useful with the other half of the inheritance. He had conquered Normandy piece by piece, and by 1144 he held the duchy outright. So the family now controlled the entire continental side of the old empire, and that, it turns out, is the firmer ground from which to take England back. That boy from 1133 is now a teenager, then a young man, Henry Fitz-Empress, and he is everything the chroniclers wish his mother had been allowed to be. Energetic, magnetic, a born ruler, and crucially, in their eyes, male. Matilda steps back. She returns to Normandy, settles near Rouen, and becomes her son's advisor, his administrator, his strategist, the steady hand running his Norman power base while he takes up the English war she has handed him. It works. It is slow, and it is patient, and it works. By 1153, Henry is strong enough, and the country is exhausted enough that the two sides come to the table. The Treaty of Wallingford. The terms are elegant, and they are essentially Matilda's victory written in someone else's name. Stephen may keep the crown for the rest of his life, but Stephen's own son, Eustace, is set aside from the succession entirely, and Henry, Matilda's son, is formally named the heir to England. It is worth pausing on how rare that is. A 19-year war, and it ends not with a final crushing battle, but with a signature, a compromise, and a careful piece of legal patience, the very qualities Matilda had spent her life mastering, while the men around her reached for swords. Stephen's life ends barely a year later, in 1154, and Matilda's boy is crowned King Henry II. He is the first of the Plantagenets, the dynasty that will rule England for over 300 years and build an empire stretching from Scotland to the south of France. Every Plantagenet, every Tudor, every Stuart, every monarch down the entire line to today descends from the woman who climbed down that rope. Matilda lived another 13 years near Rouen, governing Normandy for her son, the real power behind his continental realm. She never used the title Queen. To the end, she signed herself Empress, the rank she had earned, not the one she had been cheated of. And the words carved over her resting place do something I find quietly perfect. They do not mention the crown she lost. They read, "Great by birth, greater by marriage, greatest in her offspring." Here lies Matilda, the daughter, wife, and mother of Henry. You can stand in Rouen Cathedral today and find her there still, beneath a quiet slab of stone. The woman who was never queen, resting in the heart of the dynasty she built. We're Arthur's living history, and stories like hers, the ones where the person who actually shaped the future never got their name on the crown, are exactly why we sit up too late with the old chronicles. Tell us in the comments whether you think Matilda was robbed, or whether stepping aside for her son was the truest victory of all. Tell us which overlooked figure, which forgotten queen, which broken oath you would like us to walk into next. Subscribe if you would like to keep crossing these centuries with us, because what we are quietly building next is bigger, bolder, and braver than anything we have brought you so far. Some people win the crown. Some people win the future. And just occasionally, history finally notices it gave the wrong one the applause.